The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para-X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. I'm horror author T. Fox Dunham.
And I'm horror author and filmmaker Phil Thomas.
And tonight we're asking you,
what are you afraid of? Philadelphia's horror home with hosts T. Fox Dunham and Phil Thomas.
Salutations. This is horror host and author T. Fox Dunham introducing episode 107 of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show on Para-X Radio Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and on all major podcast services. Tonight's episode plays the best ghost stories and interviews we had in 2018. By no means is it a complete list, as we only have so much time. They were all incredible segments, and we want to thank all the guests and contributors we had on the show, including my co-host Phil Thomas, Para-X Radio, and our friends over there like Rebecca Brumble, and of course Ceiling Cat for always being patient as we loaded the shows and waiting for me to get there late, and of course David Walton, our wonderful voice actor who's done so much for us. We thank you. It's a great show to not only enjoy our previous content, but also for new listeners to check out what we do here at the dark audio magazine we call What Are You Afraid of? On this episode we feature ghost stories like I Met a Ghost in Gettysburg, from journalist and author Don Allison, The Suicide House, told by paranormal investigator Tina Marie Ronan, and my personal tale of an encounter with a ghost bus for the lost in Philadelphia. We play a remarkable story written by crime author Chris Roy, who has a story coming out in the new anthology, A Time for Violence. I also have a story in that anthology. We're going to interview baker Andrew Fuller, who was on Halloween Baking Championship on Food Network, and psychic Michael Bodine, who discusses his psychic abilities and his encounter with real vampires. Then we close the show with paranormal investigator Bill Reep, who shares an unusual EVP and electronic voice phenomenon he gathered from a famous personality from children's television. It's been a wonderful year at What Are You Afraid of, and we're planning some compelling and scary content for the coming season. Thank you to all the fans out there who have journeyed with us. Check out our website at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com for expanded content, ghost stories, more interviews and articles, and our previous archive of over 100 shows. This is episode 107, We're Going Strong. We're on Para-X Radio on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can download us from all major podcast services. We'll start tonight with an eerie ghost story of my experience with a phantom bus that haunts the streets of Philadelphia for lost and lonely souls. This is T. Fox Dunham. Enjoy. The Phantom Bus of Philadelphia, written and read by horror author T. Fox Dunham, based on true experiences and urban legends of Philadelphia. I didn't see a bus stop or a sign on Broad Street when I turned the corner, heading south to Rittenhouse Square after getting off of the MFL at Suburban Station. City Hall loomed behind me, its pillars reaching into the cloudy sky. Usually I adore traveling into the city of Philadelphia at any time of the year, and I tried to make the best of the cooler day, carrying my laptop on my back, walking to the Dandelion pub for an early drink and maybe some writing. My jaw ached from the emergency surgery the oral specialist at Penn had to perform that morning, the beginning of an intense and painful series of procedures I would need to go through to keep infection from spreading down the scar tissue left over from radiation treatment for cancer. Blood dripped in my mouth, gagging me, and I sucked on gauze and tried to ignore it, focusing on a day of writing at one of my favorite English pubs in Center City. Despair overwhelmed me, having learned of the painful surgeries that awaited me. 12 more times this would need to be done, and I once again felt broken and lost from cancer, filling up with the dark clouds obscuring the Philly skyline. As I walked alone, feeling early rain spit among the buildings, a curious and lonely SEPTA bus pulled up along the curb as if looking to pick me up. The old bus, unusually covered in a film of dirt and in need of a paint job, stopped just at my shoulder, hissed to release its pressure, then opened its door. I couldn't make out a driver in the elevated pilot seat, just a pair of legs on the seat. The electronic marquee merely said SEPTA, not announcing a destination or promoting the Phillies. An automatic voice, yet duller, vacant than I was used to hearing on the SEPTA system, said the street name, Broad Street Line, but again announced no destination. This was unusual. I could make out gray and frowning faces in the murky windows. The bus air chilled, smelled of electrical ozone, and yet I felt a pull to board the bus, though it was a strange impulse, being that I never used the Philadelphia bus system, preferring the trains, as regulated secretly by my friend Bill of Barnes & Noble in Montgomery Township. Hi, Bill. Urban legends say every city has a phantom or wandering bus. People call it the Zero, the random bus, the wandering bus, or just the bus. Many have reported this phantom bus over the years since public transportation began in Philadelphia. It is said the bus arrives at dark times in people's lives, as if drawn to radiating despair when a person is down in their life. Reports have come from drug addicts, people mourning family members, cheating spouses, the newly dying, the sick, the depressed, suicidal, or even politicians facing public scandal. It's even said that a city mayor and even the general manager for the Phillies have ridden this bus. The bus pulls up, opens its clunky doors, and the lost one's board, never giving a destination to the Inhote pilot, his face hidden with a blue hat. Just drive, they say, most sitting sans a deposit of a fare. Money is not required, just tears. The bus is not punishment, but more of a purgatory. No matter the reason, it comes for those who must leave or no longer wish to stay. It has been seen in Fishtown, off South Street, and Center City. It drives down Passyunk, Haverford, and West Philadelphia. If you don't need the wandering bus, you don't notice it, and it always gives you a choice whether to board. No one speaks on the bus, though it is not enforced like a SEPTA quiet car. People feel no desire to speak, and a susurrus whispering noise radiates in dark symphony to the moaning and droning sound of the ancient engine that grinds and turns. Passengers can sit on the same seat for hours, days, even weeks, lost in the repeating nightmare of the hell currently haunting their lives. Sometimes, if they are lucky, a spark of light shines through the mental fog, reviving them enough to wake. At random times, sans any inspiration or destination, eventually a dismal passenger will feel the need to yank the cord and depart, though it is said some have ridden the bus for years, never aging and always waiting. Those with the fortune to depart, unable or unwilling to escape the pain and darkness haunting their lives, quickly lose memory of their phantom passage. The memories wash away like dream recollections after waking, and only brief visions remain drenched in a terrible sense of regret and terror. I declined to board. I still had work to do, and I would face the medical battle that was coming. I wanted to stay here with my wife, and a drink awaited me at the Dandelion. After waiting, the bus shut its doors as if in disappointment and ghosted down to Center City, vanishing into the city traffic. A weight lifted from me as it passed, withdrawing its choice to escape. Had it come to grant a wish? A city legend states that if you ride the bus long enough, it will eventually drive so far that it will take you to a place in time before your troubles began. When I arrived at the pub and waited for it to open, a gentleman was talking to himself, oblivious to anyone around him. I said hello and it shocked him. He said most people never noticed him, that he was a ghost, though not a real ghost, and he was quite delighted that I'd said hello. I didn't really notice this encounter until I began researching more Philadelphia urban legends, and I recalled what had happened on that cold morning of April 2018. I didn't really pay attention to this encounter, considering it a fluke, until I started researching Philadelphia urban legends for What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal show. And that's when I recalled this phantom public transport on that cold morning in April 2018, and I wondered, was that the phantom bus stopping for me? I chose not to board the bus. I will face my dark times and come through the other side. But what would you do? Would you board the bus and be lost, a melting soul wasting away in desperate hope of going back in time? Either way, bring exact fare. Not change, but your despair. So let me tell you a bit about our mission on the show.
Well, we've all experienced messages from beyond the silver veil, whether we want to admit it or not. Some people take no notice, ignoring these outreaches. Others embrace them, seeing them as evidence of an expanded universe. Whether these stories frighten or comfort, we are reassured.
In my youth, I worked for various museums and gained a passion for the science of collecting folk culture. These personal experiences need to be recorded and added to this rich archive presented for scholar and seeker. We've already established an archive of collected stories that have never been recorded before.
I've experienced the paranormal on many levels during my time as a ghost hunter, from my time at Fort Mifflin to Gettysburg to the General Lafayette Inn, and I am anxious to share these stories with you.
Our intent is to create and promote a couple of podcasts a month with visual components throughout the year. The content will basically be...
It'll be reading of collected personal ghost stories as part of our outreach program to record folklore through social media, email, and community events. Horror material, including interviews with horror authors, the reading of classic ghost stories, and discussions of the industry. And we will be producing interviews with ghost hunting groups. We will be recording this podcast from notoriously haunted locations.
The broadcast will be no longer than an hour, except for, the Halloween episodes and the special holiday episodes, which will kind of go a little longer with.
Right, so we need your true stories. They need to have been personally experienced by the author, you, or someone close. The accounts should be in their own words, as if telling the story to a friend or in an email. The stories work best when around, let's say about 1,000 words, but we have done longer sagas.
Right. And we need help gathering these stories, spreading the word so people will send us their accounts. We'd also be glad for any ideas for segments or any general horror material for the show. We can offer you a promotion, but no money's changing hand. This is all for educational purposes.
That's right. So, please email us your personal true ghost stories at whatareyoufraidof117@gmail.com and Twitter at efwhatafraidof.
We look forward to hearing your stories in the future. Fantastic, thanks.
Rat, where are you going?
I'm going back to the Paranormal View, back where I belong.
Please, take me with you.
No, I'm through with everything here. I want to see if there's something left in life I haven't explored. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Rat, don't run to them. They talk about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs, and all kind of supernatural scary stuff.
You'll never understand, will you, Scarlet?
No!
Well, that's your misfortune.
Rat, if you go, where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear... Line!
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
That's the Paranormal View with your host, Henry Foister, Jeffrey Gould, and Barbara Duncan. Every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the Para X Radio Network.
What are you afraid of?
Hi, I'm Tim Wagner, Bram Stoker award-winning author.
Hashtag Grave Girls. This is Katrina Weidman of Destination America's Paranormal Lockdown.
This is Jim Chambers. I'm the author of The Engines of Sacrifice.
This is Jasper Barr, award-winning author of The Final Cut.
And you're listening to What Are You Afraid Of?
What Are You Afraid Of?
To What Are You Afraid Of?
What are you afraid of?
Love it. Fantoxic, please. Fantoxic.
Number 12 on BeatSpot's Top 30 Horror Podcast.
Michael Bodine.
Another part of this thing was, back then there wasn't all these different assemblies. There wasn't all these different things, psychic things going on. They had psychic camps, and they were all hidden. They're like, you have to drive all forever in a night, and they were in the woods someplace, and they were all secret, because seriously, people considered psychics back then mentally ill, and there was people wouldn't talk about it. In fact, it was one of the traditions, like with my mom, we just didn't talk about it. We never would talk about it. But we'd go to these camps, and each camp would have kind of a different theme to it. Nature spirits, or reincarnation, or mediumship, or whatever, channeling, and or fairies and magic. They'd all have different themes, and I hated going to those places, but because I was the youngest, and my mom didn't want to go by herself, I would get dragged to these things. The only one time that I can remember, I went to a whole bunch of them, and they were all over the 5-state area. In fact, some of them were even longer or farther away. But the one thing that I remember I had gone to a few of them, and my mom wouldn't tell me that we were going to psychic camp. She was, "Hey, grab your toothbrush. We're going to go." And because she knew I wouldn't go, or I'd come up with some excuse. And
like taking a dog to the vet,
Right. Where's the dog? Yeah. And she, so she did that same thing. And at that time I had gotten beaten up and browbeaten, to just go along with it. So I was like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Where are we going to go? And she wanted to go someplace in Michigan. So it's going to be a longer drive than normal. And, we're driving, and we get there, and it's like I say, it's in this wooded area, and this thing was all about what the stuff that's out there that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. And so there's things like they talked about fairies, and they talked about different weird stuff, which is kind of interesting at the time. I didn't really believe it. It was like I didn't. Because some of these people, you could tell them anything and they would just go with it. You'd say, "Hey, there's a unicorn." They'd be like, "Where?" You couldn't. They were just they wanted to know about any of this stuff. They wanted to believe anything. So I kind of just
over there.
Yeah, don't step on the leprechaun. And so I didn't always take it that seriously. But so she tells me right before I'm getting there, she goes, "Okay, I want you to be cool," because I tended to be a little hyper. But she said, "I want you to be cool. We're going to meet some vampires." And I said, "Yeah, right." And she goes, "No. So don't say anything. Don't do anything stupid. Just listen, okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, right, Mom. Sure. I'll watch." And I didn't believe her at all. But we get there, and there's this tent, and there's a bunch of people, probably 50. It wasn't as packed as you might think. I mean, I suppose if they sold tickets, you could have got more people. But this was all word of mouth kind of thing. So they got this stage, and on the stage it's a family of 4. They have the father, mother, daughter, son. Okay, so the kids and the mother were sort of next to the dad, and the dad was doing all the talking. And you had to see these people because I've never seen anything like it. Their skin looked like those spring rolls that you get, that white translucent stuff. You can see this. Mm-hmm. You could see. I mean, their skin was like nothing I've ever seen before. Their eyes were like gone. The kids and the mom didn't say anything. They just sat and stared. But the dad, who was very deliberate in the way he talked very slowly, confidently. But there was something about the way he was talking was like, when she first told me we were going to go see vampires, I was like, yeah, whatever. But after looking at these guys for 5 minutes, I'm thinking, man, if they're not vampires, there's something seriously wrong with them, because these people, they look just like you'd think a vampire. I mean, they didn't have fangs or anything, but and their whole point of being there wasn't about, well, look at me, I'm a vampire. It was about that there's things out there that we don't even know about that happen all the time, and that we just get so busy in our daily lives that we don't even pay attention. But there's stuff out there, and
sounds like some True Blood type stuff there with the fairies and the vampires, and
it was scary as hell.
Stackhouse or something,
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Well, see, the fairy stuff was. They didn't have any. I didn't see a fairy. It's not, and they didn't have like a skeleton of a fairy or anything like that. They just talked about stories of when this fairy did this and did that. So I was like, yeah, that's a great story. But I didn't really necessarily believe them. I'd like to believe that there's fairies, and maybe there are. But these guys, I could see them, and they said that the dad said that he was like really old, like really old, like 400 years old, and and that they'd been around a long time, that they don't just always suck blood, that a lot of times they take your energy, but they're among us all the time. It's not that they can't go out in daylight, it's just that it's really, really hard on their skin. But they have gone out. But the sun is really, really hard on them.
Of course.
But they didn't. They don't. It's not like they mind garlic or anything like that.
So
a lot of stuff that they're.
Are they like supernatural beings, or?
I don't know.
What?
They didn't call themselves vampires. They called them neck or something or other. I don't know what they. I was just like, my mouth was on the ground at that point, and I was looking for some sort of flaw, like some sort of joke, like, okay, this is a joke, or this is like they were putting on makeup or something, but. The way that they walked, the way that they moved was different than everybody else. it's like they weren't in a hurry. They just, I don't know. I don't know. I was at probably about 11 or 12, and that was the most convinced of anything that I ever was. Because, I mean, of something like that.
Now, were they like actually physically there? Could other people see them? Or?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, well, that'd have been great if it was just me.
Yeah.
No.
So everyone saw.
Everybody saw them. Yeah, and everybody was very respectful. You got the sense that they could freaking eat your brains out if they wanted to. You know, they had that sense like they were holding back, but they were being respectful of us, but they looked at us like food, like we weren't that big of a deal. You know?
Wow. So the garlic thing doesn't apply, and they technically can go out in sunlight, but it's hard on them.
It's hard for them, yeah.
Well, that's what they said, yeah. They prefer blood, but they have people that live with them, that work with them, that provide that. It's not like these random, I know, like these random, attacks and all that stuff. It's just, but that they've been around, and they will continue to be around for many, many years.
Wow.
And
how about the age? How about the age factor, like the immortality? Is that still, are they like really old?
Well, he said he was.
Well, he said he was 400 years old. He probably looked like he was 35.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So this is like really reminding me of like True Blood, because like you know how like no one believes in vampires in that universe, and then they all kind of come out.
Yeah, then they all come
and then
out.
When,
so
when they come out, everyone realizes, oh, they were here all along, but we never knew it.
Yeah, I did a thing with Charlene Harris.
Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, the panel.
Yeah, the panel with Charlene Harris. That's pretty cool. But yeah. So no, I see what you're saying, Phil. So like one day tomorrow, there's going to be a press conference, like in front of in Transylvania.
Yeah.
We are here to stay. Vampirism is not a bad thing. It's an alternative lifestyle, and
right.
Right.
Why not?
Exactly. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, that is really interesting, and Bill's going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Bill keeps asking me, when are we going to have vampire stuff on? And we just did.
Yeah, I don't think we really had much vampire stuff on at all.
But the whole theme of that wasn't about the vampires. It was about that was one of many things that exist in this world that we just don't even think about or see, or we think it's not real, but it is.
Right, absolutely.
Like a lot of people who don't believe in psychic abilities.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't mean it doesn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I miss those times when I was that ignorant. I do. It was easy, it was simple, it was about the car you drove, or the woman you were with, or the job you had, it was that's how you were thought of. And
I'm sure it's sometimes it's a lot of pressure, and do you ever sometimes feel burdened by your abilities?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
See, the problem with me is that I feel things all the time. Like I can't go to the store I bumped into a kid today when I was at the store, and I got this whole vision of he's going to have a really good career in football, but his left knee was going to be blown out. I see an MRI about this thing. His knee is ruined. And how is it going to change his life? How is it going to alter his relationship? All this stuff. And I just bumped into the guy. I never said a word to him, but I feel stuff all the time. I'll sit and, I can hear people thinking sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And, it's like constant. And I'm kind of used to it, but still, when you're around people that suck, it's not so fun.
Right.
I get that.
Absolutely.
So we are talking to Michael Bodine and hearing some very interesting stories that I'm really enjoying too, besides on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Parax Radio on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and also on all major podcast services. And you can find more information out about Michael and our bevy of ghost stories and links and biographies and a link to his book over at our website at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com.
Grey Matter Press presents a 21st Century Gothic from John C. Foster, the author of Mr. White. The Isle. There's a secret at the edge of the world. When a deadly menace threatens a remote island community, United States Marshal Virgil Bone digs into the island's macabre past. But some secrets should never be uncovered. Some curses should be believed. And some people will kill to keep it so. The Isle is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other fine retailers.
Explore the darkness.
Find out what goes bump in the night. Did you hear that?
Did you see that? What's that bright light in the sky? Oh, we so need to investigate.
Calling all witches and sensitives.
Explore the paranormal.
With host
Shauna
and Vicky.
From Geeks Paranormal.
Wednesdays
at 9 Eastern.
8 Central.
Let's explore. On paraxradio.com.
All right, here we go. Quiet. Roll up.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Willis, the host of Movies Now and Then. We're a podcast that looks at one new release film in theaters, then we compare and contrast it with a classic or underappreciated film from cinema history. We're not a traditional movie show in that we try to have a more conversational approach to our discussion. We want our listeners to be informed, engaged, and hopefully even entertained. If this sounds like something you might enjoy, give us a listen. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or anywhere podcasts are found by searching Movies Now and Then.
I Met a Ghost at Gettysburg, A Journalist's Journey into the Paranormal by Allison. Copyright 2015 and read by David Walton. Story 3. As our restoration work on the house continued, so did our strange encounters with the paranormal. The house would be quiet for weeks at a time. Then several unexplained incidents would occur within just a few days. It was a distinct relief to us, not to mention confirmation of our sanity, that others experienced the phenomena as well. Contractors' workers had batteries drain and lights turn off by themselves. One worker was upset when an invisible something tugged on his shirt tail as if to attract his attention, and he seemed to be upset that I had not warned him that the house was haunted. My brother-in-law, Gene Schelling, had several experiences, including phantom footsteps above his head while installing wiring in the basement, and hearing loud banging below in the basement while working in the living room. My cousin, Del Corson, who grew up in Phoenix City, Alabama, near our Grandma Champion, was intrigued with our house. He told me he had resided in a home he believed was haunted by the former owner, an elderly lady who had called the house home for many years. His experiences there included watching the front screen door open and close by itself. According to Del, Grandma once told him she believed he and I were sensitive to the paranormal. That, I must say, I found very intriguing. During a visit to Ohio, Del wanted to spend the night in our old house, which was not yet move-in ready, to see the ghost activities for himself. I told him not to expect anything, explaining that nothing ever happens when you are looking for it. As it turned out, I was wrong. As we were drifting off to sleep on the dining room floor, there was a loud rap on an antique floor-modelled hairdryer nearby, and then the radio turned on by itself. Needless to say, Del was impressed. I could only smile. Williams County Sheriff's deputies experienced problems with flashlights failing as they patrolled outside, keeping an eye on the premises after someone had broken in and stolen a number of tools and other items. Because so many other items remained, the deputies believed the thief might return, and in an attempt to catch him in the act, they set up a motion detector alarm. After just a few nights, however, they took the motion detector away. Something was setting it off several times a night, regardless of where they placed it in the house. This, a detective told me, had never happened to them before. Because the deputies kept up patrols at the property, they asked me to call in when I would be working late there or staying overnight. The house had gained a reputation with the dispatchers, and when I called in and gave the address, I sometimes received a matter-of-fact, "Oh, the haunted house," reply. In researching the past of the house, I learnt that a number of people had died there. In 1863, the mother and father of the Miller household died the same month, apparently of disease, and later the wife of one of their sons died as well. 4 Miller sons served in the army during the Civil War, and 2 of them died in the service. I'm sure there were other deaths in the home as well. Did any of this play into our paranormal experiences? We had no idea.
It's Andrew Fuller. He's an artist first and a baker second, he says. He lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Andrew is inspired by horror movies. He creates bloody and gory pastry creations. He is a contestant on Food Network's Halloween Baking Championship. He's designed cakes based on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He loves the works of Tim Burton and specializes in his murder pie. He's a phenomenal character who lives with an almost surreal flair, and his friends call him the King of Halloween. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Hello, Fox. It's great to be here. Thanks so much. I'm doing great today.
It's great to have you here, and you're really getting into your spooky today. Tell us about your setup over there right now.
I had to set the mood for the perfect interview today, so I am sitting in front of my favorite mausoleum in my favorite cemetery, drinking my witch's brew tea, and it's lightly raining outside, so it couldn't be more perfect to talk to you today.
It's raining here, too. That's wonderful. What's in a witch's brew tea?
You know, it's actually more of a berry flavor. It's a nice deep red color to it, but it's a lot of florals and citruses.
That sounds incredible. Okay, so you are on Halloween Baking Championship. My wife and I are a great fan, and it's comedian John Henson welcomes 8 talented bakers into the Halloween baking kitchen to face downright spooky challenges and scarily accurate critiques from outrageously costumed judges Carla Hall, Lorene Pascal, and Zach Young, and one baker will rise to claim the title of Halloween Baking Champion and a $25,000 prize. How did you get on the show?
It's a rigorous process, to say the least. I was approached by a producer who saw some of my work and invited me to explore that process. And, it's a lot of getting to know your personality, seeing what your baking styles are. There's a lot more to it than just, what can you bake? As people know, I kind of exude Halloween, so it was perfect for me. But it's a several month-long process involving phone interviews, Skype calls, creating dishes to their liking, stretching my creative imagination as much as I possibly could to wow them.
You have quite a great cast of characters from different backgrounds, and they all bring their unique talents, what they're baking at the time. And it's interesting to see their culture come out in their food that they're cooking. What sort of unique things do you bring to your baked goods?
As a child, I grew up being drawn towards horror movies and the creepy and the macabre and everything like that. And so, as I always tell people, that I truly do consider myself a fan of horror and an artist first, and then a baker second. So for me, visually, I'm always going for the creepier and the spookier and the scarier. But as far as flavors, I really like to also surprise the person who's going to be tasting the food that I'm making. Our eyes see something first, and obviously we want to wow people with that, but I want to surprise them and shock them as well with the flavor. So I like to incorporate elements that people don't expect in their dishes, like smoked paprika, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we saw yesterday, and that was the challenge, right? And the surprise challenge, and you were already putting it in your recipe.
So actually, that's not right. So the first challenge, we had to create a something that a spider entangled under its web. Mm-hmm. And then we were each given a creature. Mine was a snake.
Right.
And I was going to use cayenne pepper in that cake. Mm-hmm. And the cayenne pepper was missing. And I think that may have been because the next challenge, our surprise ingredient, was cayenne pepper. So I was going to use cayenne in my first recipe, and I improvised and ended up using the smoked paprika, which actually turned out quite surprisingly satisfying for everybody.
Between you and me and Allison, well, and maybe our listeners, you put down the shell, and the heat of the brownie was starting to melt it prematurely. What was going through your mind when you saw that?
Well, it's like I just decided to make everything as hard as possible for myself, beginning with the fact that I was using a larger mold than most people and that there was only one of them. Most people had something that had at least 6 cavities, some had 12 cavities, and I had to make multiples of everything. And I was already struggling with that. So as soon as I saw that the ones that I was successfully releasing from their molds started melting under the lights, I thought my heart was breaking, literally. Not melting, but breaking.
But you made it through, and I'll tell you, there was a moment of suspense as I was watching, and Allison was going, oh, hon, I don't know. And I'm like, he's got to make it.
I bring the drama, apparently.
Excellent. That's what makes it so enjoyable.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Saint is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
This is Phil Thomas with What Are You Afraid Of? And I'm here with...
My name is Tina Ronan, and I'm from Elkhart, Indiana.
How are you today, Tina?
I'm doing very well. And yourself?
I'm great, and we're here at the Selma Mansion.
We are.
Right?
Very nice
For the Paranormal Convention.
Yes. I'm here. I brought both my companies, Heirloom Haberdashery and Nature's Earthware, steampunk and metaphysical jewelry.
I noticed. I was actually in here yesterday looking all around. I was like, wow, there's some really great stuff you got here. Now, is this stuff you hand make? Is it handmade, everything? Because there's some really incredible stuff. The goggles and the hats, and it looks amazing.
It is. I do buy the hats, and then I embellish them. Got long winters in Indiana, got to do something. So
you're absolutely right. Yes. So you have a ghost story for us today, right?
I do.
Very fitting for where we're at.
Exactly, yes. I've been a paranormal investigator for over 16 years now. I go out and investigate. I also help people from time to time if they need it to the best of my ability. And I have one I wanted to share with you. It was a friend who had a home that was a rental. They've had trouble throughout the years. They had a gentleman who committed suicide within the home. A few years later, a family moved into the home, and their 6-year-old son attempted to commit suicide by hanging himself in the tree out front. So the house just has a pall over it. It's just, you walk in and it doesn't feel right, the whole thing. Well, they decided to take it off the market and no longer use it as a rental property, and she turned it into a resale shop. Well, she literally got driven out one day by something that was there, and she ran out screaming.
Oh, wow.
So she called me up and she asked me to come over, and I came over. I have blessed salt, holy water. I did prayers, and I was putting salt in the corners. And as I'm going through the house, she's sitting out in the car because she's too scared to come in. As I'm doing all the different corners in the house, all of a sudden a framed picture that is up on the wall flies off the wall and falls down in front of me, blocking the doorway. It's literally standing on edge.
Oh, wow. That's...
Yeah.
I'm sure that was an experience to have, right? Goodness.
It was, but I just said, you know what? If that's all you got, I'm not afraid.
Yeah, right.
At that point in time, when I said that, the front door slammed open.
Wow.
And the person who owns the home started screaming while she's sitting in my car. And then to make it worse, the door slammed shut.
Oh, my God.
So I did get the door open. I had her come in. I said, stay with me. I promise I'll keep you safe. And we decided to try and finish the house together. And as we're walking up the steps, there were several framed pictures that you can see had been knocked down. There was still glass on the steps. She goes, it wasn't like this last week when I left. So her and I are walking up. We're being very careful not to step on the steps with glass. We get upstairs, we start to salt, and I am able to feel and know when there are spirits around. So I told her, I said, there's a young woman here. I said, she seems to be trapped, like someone's holding her here. She doesn't seem to be able to move on. She goes, well, when we came and got the house out of being a rental, one of the rooms had been painted fully black with a pentagram on the wall. She goes, there had been some animal sacrifice. I'm like, okay, you've got like everything here at the same time. So we're up there doing prayer, doing blessed salt, and as we're doing it, we could hear somebody literally coming up the steps.
Wow.
So we both go to the top of the steps to look down to see who's coming up. As we look down, there is no one there, but we can see where someone is stepping because the glass is breaking where their foot hits the glass. That was it for the homeowner. She ran out screaming. I walked down the steps and we left. So I did get to go back to the house and continue and finish off everything. And when we tried to open up the attic steps, it was literally as though someone was holding the handle because we could get the top and the bottom of the door to come almost open, but right where the handle was, and there was no lock. We could not get it open. We finally wrenched it open, and as we did that, there was a very dark shadow of what seemed to be a very big man there. You could kind of see him, but see through him as well.
Right.
And we just said, okay, you can be all the bully you want. We'll leave you alone. We tossed in blessed salt, a prayer, slammed the door, and we walked out. So it was just quite an experience in this house.
And what, has there been anything that happened since, or did that pretty much do the trick, what you guys did?
Well, I did see the homeowner a couple months later, and I said, how are things going? She goes, well, we actually had some financial trouble, so we actually moved into the house. I said, oh, how's that going? She goes, we're fine. I said, okay. I said, what does that mean? She goes, we're fine. It was like she was zombie-like. I saw her husband the very next day at Walmart, and he's walking around, and I'm like, oh, how are you? We're fine. That's all they would say. I haven't seen them since, and the house has been, since that time, knocked down.
Really? It's been knocked down.
It's been knocked down.
Wow. So that's actually really creepy. That almost gave me chills. When there's both of them, not just one of them, but both of them, when you asked them, said, we're fine.
And it was in that type of voice, so I really feared for them, but I could not get them to answer me. They would no longer answer emails, phone calls, anything, and I haven't seen them since. I do know they're still in the area, but I haven't seen them.
Wow. That's very creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Anytime.
Very much. I much appreciate it. This is Phil Thomas with What Are You Afraid of to End?
Tina Ronan.
Marsh Madness. Published in Near to the Knuckle by Chris Roy. Read by David Walton. The heron stalked through the flooded marsh, eyes intent on movement below the muddy surface. Beak aimed like a javelin. It stopped, poised to strike. Patient. The heron flinched before it burst out of the water, thrust from its huge wings, leaving a mist like a jet's contrail as it soared to a safe height over the maze of marsh islands. Out of the haze of fog drifting over the water emerged a man. Behind him, as if he had bored a tunnel through the thick gloom, were woods with ancient oak trees twisting out into the bayou. Long tendrils of dull grey moss snaking down to the mud seemed to vibrate with a dissonant buzz. Hundreds of thousands of insects clung to the trees and brushed along the bank, belting out a chorus that was randomly broken up by disturbances in the water. Hunched over, dull grey beard hanging like moss from a sun-weathered face, the man blazed a trail of silence, stepping through the muck with a heron's patience. His eyes, black and stretched wide, had an unnatural gleam in the twilight. An alligator hide rifle case was slung across his back, one hand holding the butt close to his flank, silencing its movement and that of his rubber waders. With his other hand, he pushed aside sharp blades of grass that would have sliced into most people's skin. He came to the edge of the marsh island and stilled himself. Standing tall, a scarecrow overlooking a huge field of dead cornstalks, his eyes shifted to the left as theme park music began playing in the far distance. A Ferris wheel stood above the fog bank, lights from several small rides glaring up at it, giving the entire fairgrounds a faint glow. The high-pitched, tinny notes penetrated the thick gloom, floating along with it. The man bared his black gums in that direction for a moment. Deep wrinkles spread from his eyes and mouth. Absently, he rubbed his ear. A twisted, misshapen scar ran right through it. A dog barked. The man's head turned forward in a blink, wrinkles deepening with a smile. Across the narrow channel was a large dog standing on a low wooden pier, a golden retriever. Behind the dog, on top of a hill, a dark grey mist shrouded a small mobile home. A breeze pushed out of the woods, momentarily showing a porch, a yellow light struggling to illuminate steps. A swing set, barbecue grill and trampoline were haphazardly placed in a large overgrown yard that sloped down to disappear into the high tide. Claws ticked and scrambled over broken, failing planks. The dog barked at the water. A wave of silence spread rapidly throughout the marsh. The insects started up again. The dog's panting could be heard clearly across the channel. The object of the dog's interest was 3 feet below the end of the pier. Sticking up like an old stump was the head of a bull alligator. The dog, unafraid, seemed to play a game familiar between the two. The barking, clawing and loud panting continued. Around the man, frogs had joined the bugs, quieting after barks, as if considering how to reply and join in their game. "Mario! Mario! Dummy! Get away from there!" A small boy materialized in the mist at the top of the yard. A screen door creaked and slammed on the trailer. He ran down to the pier, stopped and whistled, clapped his hands. "Come here, boy! Mario!" The retriever glanced at the boy, tongue lolling, started wagging his tail. His head swiveled back to the alligator, mouth opening, closing, tip of his tongue wiggling with each pant. He barked again, pawed the pier, bounced up and down, darted from side to side. The man hadn't moved. He observed the alligator, peripherally tracking the dog and the boy. "Stupid dog, come on! We're not supposed to play on the pier. Mom's going to yell at us." He wrung his hands, chewing on his lip. Mario kept barking and wagging at the alligator. The boy stepped carefully onto the pier, looked over his shoulder at the trailer, then ran to the end of the pier, leaping a jagged hole. His sneakers thumped to a stop, arms encircling Mario's neck. "Come on! What are you doing?" He looked down into the water. Wide-set, emotionless eyes looked back at him. "Whoa! Crud! The alligator!" The dog turned to lick the boy, rear end wagging, and threw him from his feet. He shouted as his hands and chin banged hard on the planks. His shoes splashed in the water, legs sliding in. The alligator's head disappeared in a swirl of black. The man moved quickly. Grabbing the top of the rifle case, he unsnapped it, slid out a crossbow, and unfolded the arms, locking them, loaded a bolt, brought it to his shoulder, aiming through a high-powered scope at the boy's legs. "Mario!" All the boy's breath burst from him in a single scream. Around the man, the marsh creatures scattered into the grass or water. The boy tore at the planks with his tiny fingers, shoes thudding into the water behind him. The dog wore a puzzled expression. He chuffed, pawing the pier in front of the boy. Then he stretched and bit the collar of the boy's shirt, jerked and snatched him back onto the pier. The boy's shoes cleared right as the alligator popped up under them. "Whoa! Shoot! Whoa! Whoa!" The boy staggered, gripping his shirt, pushing at Mario until he let go. The big dog abruptly spun and ran off the pier. The screen door slapped shut from the trailer and a tall, sandy-haired woman in jeans and flip-flops walked down to the water, gesturing with a hairbrush. "God damn it, Sam, really? I told you not to play by the water and specifically not on the pier, and your freaking clothes are wet? Get your ass in the house and get changed. You're going to be late for the bus." She stuck the brush in her back pocket, whistled loudly, clapped her hands. "Mario, let's go, boy! Get your ass in the house, you better not be wet too." Mario barked and waggled, looking at the woman. Then he bounded up the yard and raced past her. The woman turned to follow her chastened son, and the man aimed the scope at her ass. His lips peeled back, blackened gums catching light that darkened them further. Lines branching from the corner of his eyes, blending into single deep furrows. Jeans stretched over hips, dug into buttocks at 70 times. The man's finger caressed the weapon's trigger. The stump appeared in the water again, this time where the yard met the water. The dog zoomed past the woman and boy, barking up a storm. The man tracked the alligator as it moved slowly towards the yard, crosshairs centered just behind its eyes. Mario, bounding downhill, tongue lolling in a toothy smile, barked his "I'm a good dog, let's play" bark. As he came to a sudden stop, the man brought the crossbow up slightly and shot the dog in the front leg. Gravity and momentum were against the big dog. He pitched over into the bayou. The stump vanished. The dog never surfaced. The splash made Sam and the woman stop and turn around. They didn't see Mario. The woman frowned severely. The boy looked alarmed. When Mario didn't respond to his name being called, Sam ran back to the pier. The woman followed, flip-flops slapping hard against her feet. The man took aim at her chest, shirt straining against her swaying breasts. His finger moved faster, though still gently, over the trigger. "Well, where the hell is he?" The woman planted her feet, fists on hips. "Mario!" She demanded for Sam to find his dog and get his ass to the bus stop, wet clothes and all. Sam, completely bewildered, looked from the pier to the water, looked at his mum and shrugged. He squinted at the woods. leaned over and peered intently through the fog at the marsh across the channel. He gasped and jerked upright. A sob caught in his throat as his eye moved back to the pier, to the water. He turned towards his mum. "The alligator, Mum! The alligator!" "The alligator? What about the alligator?" the woman muttered. "Shit," and walked down next to Sam, frowned at the water. Her eyebrows lifted. She put her hand to her mouth. She almost said, "But that old gator and Mario are friends." But Sam knew better, and so did she. Sam took a deep, sharp breath and let out a wail that pierced deep into the bayou. The heavy fog began lifting. A fresh breeze billowed Sam's wet pants as he clung to his mother's leg, sobbing. The man's smile broadened to a full grin, tiny pinpoints of light refracting from his jet eyes and gums. One eye closed and he looked through the scope once more. A dry suction emitted from his throat, tongue pressing into his top gum, unsticking. Carnival music, louder now that the fog was lifting, tinkled on the breeze as the man studied the woman's backside again. She bent over to pick up her crying son and carried him up to the porch. Chris Roy was raised in South Mississippi, in the midst of ugly Gulf Coast beaches and spectacular muddy bayous. Chris lived comfortably with the criminal ventures of his youth until a fistfight in 1999 ended tragically. Since January 2000, he's been serving a life sentence in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. Nowadays, he lives his life crime vicariously through the edgy, fast-paced stories he pens, hoping to entertain readers. When he isn't writing, he's reading, drawing, or looking for prospects to train in boxing. Hi, I'm David Walton, and I drop whatever I'm doing to read whatever Fox and Phil demand of me. My digital, as opposed to ectoplasmic alter ego, is called Brendan Shawland, who regularly plays guitar and sings in a virtual world. Brendan has a website, David doesn't. Bandcamp sales figures would suggest that Brendan's music is decidedly niche. If you want to be in the vanguard of support as Brendan heads towards global domination, just put Brendan Shawland in your favourite search engine, and you'll find his website very close to the top. You'll see what the human looks like, and you can check out the Listen to a Song page to access Brendan's unwillingly private world of creative output.
Reeve Investigations is a member of the Gettysburg Paranormal Association and is a founding member of the Guardians of the Sword.
Exciting, yes.
Hi, Bill.
We were on our way back from the Bel Air house last month. Chris Morrissey and I did our little side trips, which we look for obscure things, and we went to pay homage to Fred Rogers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mr. Rogers.
So we went to Mr. Rogers' burial plot, to the mausoleum, and we did try to communicate with him.
Okay.
Oh,
that's cool.
And we did get a voice that sounded very similar to his, and in a cadence rhythm that would have been similar to his voice pattern. Did we reach Fred Rogers? I'd like to think I did, because he was a great man. Did a lot of wonderful things. Public broadcasting, helped people, children.
He was a Marine too, wasn't he? Fred Rogers.
Actually, that was false.
Oh, was that false? See, I'd heard that. I wondered.
The tattoo thing was false, and that was actually the question we asked. Chris asked that question. She says, how do you feel about the false reports about who you were, being a sniper, being a military, being all of this? And he said it hurts.
What do you think of all the rumors that you were military and killed so many people?
Some great paranormal investigators out there, but very few can claim to have spoken to Mr. Rogers.
I agree. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That is.
Now take Uncle Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy's now a demon.
T. Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard, and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Books. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality, or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the next Stargate anthology from MGM and Fandemonium Books, Points of Origin. Fox is an active member of the Horror Writers Association, and he's had published hundreds of short stories and articles. His motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time.
Phil Thomas is an author and screenwriter from the suburbs of Philadelphia. His screenplays have been produced into feature films False Face and Always from Darkness, and are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand. His short films can be viewed on his YouTube channel, Film Zero Presents. He is a member of the International Association of Professional Writers and Editors, and he currently writes for Cultured Vultures, Game Skinny, and BloodyDisgusting.com. His first novel, The Poe Predicament, is being published in 2018 by Caliburn Press.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.